Myra had never questioned the order of things. She had been created for a purpose, engineered, not born, in the cold laboratories of the Zenith Collective. Like all members of her species, the Alari, she possessed an intellect honed for precision, a mind wired for logic, and a body optimized for survival. Emotions were irrelevant distractions, artifacts of lesser beings who had yet to evolve beyond biological impulses. And yet, as she stood before the holographic briefing interface, her directives took a strange turn. "You will study the human concept of love," the voice of Overseer Kirith intoned. "The Council demands comprehensive understanding. You will be assigned a human subject for analysis." Love. The word was a void in Myra's lexicon, a meaningless collection of phonemes that, for some reason, fascinated the Council. She did not understand why, but understanding was her purpose. Her human subject was Jason Carter, a researcher specializing in human culture, stationed on the orbital station Vanguard 6. His profile appeared in a digital projection before her. Late 30s, Earthborn, a history of academic publications on human psychology and social behaviors. He would be her guide into this strange and irrational domain. Myra tilted her head, processing. "Understood. I will extract the necessary data." As the ship carrying her approached Vanguard 6, she found herself experiencing something unusual. Anticipation. But anticipation of what? She did not yet have the words for it. Jason Carter had seen a lot in his years working with extraterrestrial cultures, but this was a first. "Let me get this straight," he said, leaning back in his chair, arms crossed. "You're here to study love?" Myra, sitting across from him in the sterile white meeting room, gave a small nod. She was unlike most aliens he had worked with, humanoid in form, but eerily precise in her movements, her silver-white skin reflecting the artificial light. Her eyes, an unnatural shade of violet, regarded him with an intensity that was both unsettling and oddly captivating. "Correct. The Council has deemed this subject necessary for furthering our understanding of human cognition. You will assist me." Jason rubbed his chin. "And how exactly do you plan to study love? Dissect it like a biology experiment? If necessary." He chuckled. "Well, that's not how it works." "Explain." Jason exhaled, leaning forward. "Love isn't just a concept. It's an experience, a feeling. You can't just analyze it from a distance. You have to feel it." Myra blinked. "That is inefficient. Emotions compromise objectivity." "Maybe," he said, smirking, "but they also make us human." He tapped on his tablet, pulling up an old Earth database. "If you want to understand love, we need to start with stories." Myra's head tilted slightly. "Stories?" "Yep. Literature, music, poetry. Humans have been trying to define love for thousands of years. It's not something you can just quantify with data. It's something you have to experience through the eyes of those who lived it." She considered this. "Then show me." Jason grinned. "All right, let's start with Shakespeare." And so, the lessons began. Days turned into weeks. Myra absorbed everything Jason gave her. Sonnets of longing, tragic romances, symphonies composed in the throes of passion. She processed the words of poets who had spent lifetimes trying to define what love meant. But something was wrong. She did not understand why humans mourned love lost, why they longed for someone who was absent, why they sang songs of devotion to another. Love was irrational, contradictory, and maddeningly inconsistent. One evening, as she sat across from Jason in his quarters, she voiced her frustration. "This does not make sense." Jason, sipping his drink, raised an eyebrow. "What doesn't?" "Love." She gestured at the holoscreen, where a classic Earth film played, a tale of two lovers separated by war, longing for each other across time. "It is pain and joy simultaneously. It is irrational. Why do humans seek something that causes suffering?" Jason exhaled, setting his glass down. "Because the good outweighs the bad. Love makes life richer, even if it hurts sometimes." Myra's violet eyes searched his face. "Then, have you experienced it?" A flicker of something unreadable passed over his expression. He hesitated. "Yeah." She leaned forward slightly. "And did it hurt?" Jason chuckled, shaking his head. More than I care to admit. A silence stretched between them. Myra found herself studying his face, noticing details she hadn't before. The way his mouth curved when he smiled, the warmth in his gaze when he looked at her. A strange sensation coiled in her chest. It was unfamiliar, unquantifiable, but she did not yet have the words for it. Something was changing within Myra. At first, it was subtle. She found herself thinking about Jason when he wasn't present. She anticipated their conversations, their debates. The sound of his laughter lingered in her mind longer than it should. It was inefficient. It was irrational. And yet, she did not want it to stop. One night, after a long discussion about love and music, she posed a question she had not dared to before. Jason, what does it mean to want someone? He blinked, caught off guard. You mean, like desire? Yes. Humans sing of it, write of it. Is it merely physical? Jason hesitated. Not always. It's about connection, feeling close to someone, wanting to be near them, to share things with them. Myra considered this. Then, is that what I feel? Jason sat up. What do you mean? She placed a hand over her chest, feeling the strange sensation again. When I am with you, I feel something I cannot categorize. I anticipate your presence. I find satisfaction in our discussions. Your absence creates a void I do not understand. Her voice softened. Is this love? Jason's breath caught. For the first time since their lessons began, he had no words. Myra leaned closer, her violet eyes searching his. Tell me, Jason, have I found the answer? He swallowed hard. Myra, Before he could finish, an urgent chime blared through the room. Incoming transmission from the Zenith Collective. Immediate response required. Myra stiffened. The council was calling, and she suddenly understood. This feeling in her chest, it was fear. The mechanical chime of the incoming transmission echoed in the small quarters. Jason sat frozen, watching as Myra's violet eyes darkened. A rare shift in expression for her. He had never seen her hesitate before. Slowly, she turned to the wall panel, pressing her palm against the interface. A holographic projection flickered to life, revealing a tall, imposing figure. Overseer Kirith. His elongated features were unreadable, but his gaze bore into Myra with silent authority. You have deviated from protocol, Kirith said, his voice cold, measured. Your reports have been insufficient. The Council demands a conclusive assessment of the human phenomenon known as love. Myra's fingers twitched at her sides. The data remains incomplete. I require more time. Time is irrelevant. You were not sent to experience love, Myra. You were sent to analyze it. Jason's jaw tightened. He didn't like where this was going. You're rushing her, he said, standing. This isn't something you can just process like a mathematical equation. Love is human, Kirith interrupted, dismissively, and therefore flawed. Our goal is not to embrace it, but to understand why your kind clings to such an illogical concept. His gaze sharpened on Myra. You are Ilari. You are beyond such weaknesses. Remember your purpose. Jason glanced at Myra, waiting for her usual, mechanical compliance. But she remained silent. Kiritha's expression darkened. Return to the vessel immediately. Your assignment is complete. Jason's heart pounded. He didn't know why, but the thought of her leaving, of losing this strange, brilliant, unreadable woman, sent a surge of something unpleasant through his chest. Myra, he said quietly, you don't have to go. She turned to him, and for the first time, he saw uncertainty in her. The line cut off before she could reply. The hologram dissolved into nothing. And for the first time, Jason saw something he never thought he would see. Myra was afraid. She stood motionless, processing. The weight of Kiritha's command lingered in the air like static. Jason stepped closer. You don't want to go, do you? Her fingers twitched again. It is not a matter of want, she murmured. I was created to serve the Zenith Collective. I do not possess the freedom to choose. Jason frowned. That's bullshit. She blinked at him. You do have a choice. You just don't know it yet. Myra hesitated, her gaze lowering slightly. I was designed to function within logic. Emotion is disorder. It is weakness. Jason exhaled, running a hand through his hair. Damn it, Myra. If that were true, then why do you hesitate? He stepped closer, his voice softer now. Why did you say you feel something when I'm not around? Why did you ask me if it was love? Her eyes met his, wide, searching. And then, realization flickered behind them. She took a step back. I am compromised. Jason's stomach twisted. No, you're just waking up. For the first time since she arrived, Myra looked human, unsure, conflicted, alive. But then her expression hardened again, the cold precision of her programming fighting to reassert itself. She turned away. I must go. Jason felt something desperate clawing inside him. He wasn't sure what made him do it. Maybe it was the weeks of their conversations, the strange pull between them, or maybe it was just the thought of never seeing her again. But before she could leave, he reached for her wrist. She froze. Myra, he murmured, his voice barely above a whisper. Stay. The room was silent except for the quiet hum of the station's life support systems. She looked down at his hand on her wrist. The contact was light, barely there, but it sent something electric through her. A data surge, a miscalculation, an anomaly. No, a feeling. Her voice was barely audible when she spoke. I do not know how. Jason's grip tightened, just slightly. Then let me teach you. The words hung between them, a challenge, a plea. She could hear the ship's recall signal echoing through the station's corridors. She knew what would happen if she defied the council. Alari were not permitted to feel. But what if she did? What if she wanted to? She took a slow, shaking breath, and she did not let go of his hand. The Zenith Collective did not tolerate disobedience. The moment Myra failed to report back, Kirith initiated protocol erasure. Alari agents, engineered for precision and lethality, were dispatched. Jason and Myra were now fugitives. Inside Vanguard 6, red emergency lights flickered through the corridors. Jason hurriedly led Myra through the station's maintenance tunnels, his pulse hammering. You really pissed off your bosses, he muttered. Myra, unervingly calm despite their situation, responded, Correction. We have now pissed off my bosses. Jason let out a short, breathless laugh. Glad you're catching on. She glanced at him, something unreadable in her violet eyes. If we escape, what then? Jason hesitated. They had no plan, no safe haven, but he knew one thing for certain. He wasn't going to lose her. We figure it out together, he said. For the first time in her existence, Myra was uncertain of what came next, and she had never felt more alive. Jason's boots thudded against the metal floor of Vanguard 6's maintenance tunnels as he pulled Myra along. Behind them, the station's alarm blared, a mechanical wail that signaled imminent lockdown. Do they have remote overrides? Jason asked between breaths, glancing over his shoulder. Yes, Myra replied, her voice unervingly steady despite the urgency of their escape. If they access the station's core systems, they can seal all exits within 3 minutes. Jason muttered a curse. Then we need to get off this rock now. They emerged into the docking bay, an industrial cavern filled with transport vessels, cargo haulers, and emergency escape pods. Across the platform, a squad of Alari enforcers in sleek black armor descended from a Zenith craft, their movements eerily synchronized. Shit, Jason hissed. The Alari moved fast, too fast for normal soldiers. They were engineered like Myra, built for efficiency and lethality. If they got their hands on her, she'd be dragged back to the collective. Or worse. Myra's eyes darted to the ships. There. The auxiliary freighter. It has minimal security protocols. Jason followed her gaze to a mid-sized cargo ship resting on the edge of the docking bay. It wasn't pretty, but it had engines. And they needed engines. They sprinted for it. The moment their feet hit the loading ramp, a sharp was cut through the air. A high-frequency pulse round struck the railing beside them, sending sparks flying. They're shooting at us? Jason barked. They are not attempting to kill you, Myra corrected. They are attempting to incapacitate me. Great, that's so much better, he snapped. As they ducked into the ship, Jason slammed the console to initiate lockdown. Myra immediately moved to the control panel, her fingers flying across the interface. Engines initializing. Docking clamps disengaging. Another round struck the outer hull. A voice echoed through the docking bay's comms. Myra, surrender. There is no future for you outside the collective. Jason turned to her, pulse racing. They're bluffing. Don't listen to them. Myra's hands trembled for just a fraction of a second. Then she engaged the thrusters. With a violent lurch, the ship tore free from Vanguard's docking clamps and rocketed into the void. The silence of deep space stretched around them, broken only by the hum of the ship's systems. Jason exhaled slowly, letting his body sink into the co-pilot's chair. That was insane, he muttered. You do not mess around with your people, huh? Myra, seated beside him, remained quiet. Her hands rested on her lap, fingers interlocked in an unusual display of tension. Jason frowned. You okay? She didn't respond immediately. Then, in a near whisper, she said, I have never defied the collective before. Jason ran a hand through his hair. Yeah, well, first time for everything. They will not stop. Jason's stomach twisted. He knew she was right. The Zenith Collective wasn't the type to let a rogue agent run free. They wouldn't rest until she was found, restrained, and erased. Like she had never existed at all. He leaned forward. We'll figure something out, okay? We just need a plan. Do you have any contacts outside the collective? No. Resources? No. Secret space station where Rogalari go to escape their overlords? Myra finally looked at him, her expression unreadable. No. Jason exhaled. Great. We're totally screwed. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. The only sound was the quiet beeping of the navigation console. Then Myra said, Perhaps not. Jason turned to her. You have an idea? She hesitated. There is the possibility. A place where the collective's reach is limited. But it is dangerous. Jason grinned. Myra, we just fled an interstellar death squad in a stolen ship. I think we passed dangerous about 3 exits ago. Her lips parted slightly, a reaction that almost looked like amusement. Then she input coordinates into the ship's computer. Then we go to Dravis 9. Dravis 9 wasn't on any official maps. It was a lawless station orbiting the shattered remains of an ancient moon, a place where fugitives, mercenaries, and exiles gathered in the shadows of the civilized galaxy. As their ship approached, Jason took in the chaotic sprawl of docking platforms, neon-lit corridors, and ships that ranged from battered freighters to heavily armed warcraft. Charming place, he muttered. It is beyond the collective's influence, Myra said. For now. They landed in a dimly lit docking bay. The moment the ship's ramp lowered, the heavy scent of oil, smoke, and unwashed bodies filled Jason's nose. Across the bay, a group of heavily armed men eyed them from beneath flickering neon lights. Jason leaned toward Myra. So, we got friends here? No. He exhaled. Fantastic. They moved cautiously through the station. The air was thick with tension, the kind that made Jason keep a hand close to his concealed blaster. But Myra walked with an eerie calmness, her violet eyes scanning the crowd with quiet precision. Then she stopped. Jason followed her gaze, and his stomach twisted. Across the bar, a hooded figure sat alone, their elongated fingers wrapped around a glass of dark liquid. Friend of yours? Jason asked. An old acquaintance, Myra admitted. We may be able to secure safe passage through them. Jason eyed the stranger warily. And what's the catch? Myra turned to him, her expression unreadable. They do not deal in currency. They deal in secrets. Jason exhaled sharply. Great, because we totally don't have any of those. As they approached, the hooded figure looked up. A slow, knowing smile crossed their lips. Well, the stranger murmured. If it isn't the runaway Alari. Their gaze flickered to Jason, and the human fool who followed her. Jason scowled. Nice to meet you too. The stranger leaned back. I imagine the collective wants you both dead. Myra's voice was steady, which is why we need passage to the outer reaches. You can arrange it. The stranger tilted their head. Perhaps. Their gaze lingered on Myra. But tell me, Alari, do you even know why you ran? Myra's fingers curled slightly at her sides. The stranger's smile widened. You think it was a choice? That you defied the Zenith Collective out of logic, rebellion, or freedom? They leaned forward, their voice soft and taunting. But the truth is, you ran because of him. Jason's breath caught. Myra stiffened. For the first time since their escape, she realized something. She had not left because of fear or logic. She had left because Jason had asked her to stay, and she had wanted to. For the first time in her existence, she had made a choice, and it had been for him. The realization sent a strange warmth through her chest, one she could not explain, but she no longer needed to. She understood now. She had found her answer. The stranger's words lingered in the air like a dagger hanging between them. Jason felt Myra tense beside him, but she said nothing. Her violet eyes locked onto the hooded figure, expression unreadable, but Jason could see it. Something shifting beneath her surface, something fragile yet undeniable. She knows it's true. The stranger chuckled, swirling their drink. Fascinating. An Alari discovering love. Do you have any idea what that means? Jason crossed his arms. Look, buddy, we didn't come here for a therapy session. Can you get us passage or not? The stranger's smile lingered. Of course. Everything has a price. Jason sighed. Here we go. The figure leaned forward, the dim neon lights casting sharp shadows across their face. There is a Zenith outpost in the Rixus Belt, an intelligence hub. The data it holds would be valuable to certain people. You retrieve it, and I will ensure you both vanish from the collective's radar. Myra's eyes narrowed. You wish us to betray the Zenith. The stranger smirked. You already did. Jason glanced at Myra. He could see the war inside her. Logic warring with something new, something she was still learning to name. Finally, she spoke. What specific data? The stranger's smile widened. You will know it when you see it. Jason rolled his eyes. Oh, great. Super helpful. The stranger leaned back. You have 3 days. After that, my offer expires. Jason exhaled, glancing at Myra. So, are we doing this? Myra's gaze was distant, calculating. Then, slowly, she nodded. Yes, we are. The Rixus Belt was a graveyard, an expanse of shattered asteroids and derelict ships, remnants of battles long forgotten. As their stolen freighter drifted through the debris field, Jason tapped at the navigation console. Tell me again why this place isn't swarming with security? The Zenith outpost is hidden within the wreckage, Myra explained. Its defenses rely on secrecy rather than brute force. Jason shook his head. So basically, if we don't get shot down, we'll probably just crash into something. That is an acceptable risk. Yeah, for you. The outpost came into view, an angular structure built into the husk of a ruined dreadnought, half buried in the asteroid field. Dark, silent, too silent. Jason frowned. I don't like this. No patrols, no movement. It's like a damn ghost ship. Myra's fingers moved over the console. Scanners indicate minimal life signatures. Something is wrong. Jason grabbed his blaster. Let's find out what. Inside the outpost, the air was stale, thick with the scent of machinery and something else, something metallic. Blood. Jason's grip on his blaster tightened as they stepped over a body. The corpse was Alari, its silver-white skin drained of color, its lifeless eyes staring blankly at the ceiling. Shit, Jason muttered. This wasn't us. Myra knelt, scanning the body with her wrist device. No visible wounds. Cause of death, unknown. Jason's gut twisted. You think the Zenith killed their own? Unlikely. This was not a sanctioned execution. As they moved deeper, they found more bodies. Scientists, security personnel, slumped over consoles, frozen mid-step in the hallways. No signs of struggle. No signs of anything. Jason shuddered. Something isn't right. Let's get what we came for and get the hell out of here. Myra led him to the central data core, a towering structure of pulsing blue light. She interfaced with the system, fingers flying across the controls. Extracting files. Jason shifted uneasily. How much longer? 72 seconds. The lights flickered. Jason spun around. That normal? Myra's fingers hesitated. No. The console crackled. A whispering voice, distorted and inhuman, filtered through the system. Who is there? Jason's blood ran cold. What the fuck was that? The whispering deepened, overlapping itself, growing louder. Myra's fingers moved faster. We are not alone. Then, the screens went black, and the whisper became a scream. Jason staggered back as the lights flared, bathing the room in an eerie glow. Myra's eyes widened as the data core pulsed erratically. Something is inside the system, she murmured. The whispering returned, but now it had a shape, a voice, hollow and hungry. You are not Zenith. Jason aimed his blaster at the shadows. Nope, and we were just leaving, so if you don't mind. The temperature dropped. Then, from the dark, something moved. A shape, flickering in and out of sight, its form shifting like liquid shadow. Alari features twisted into something wrong. Eyes too wide, mouth too stretched. Jason's breath caught. What the hell is that? Myra's voice was barely above a whisper. Not Alari. Not human. The entity's head tilted. Its voice was inside their minds now, slithering like cold fingers. You are different. You love. Jason stiffened. His finger twitched on the trigger. Not really something we want to discuss right now, thanks. The entity laughed, a sound that made Jason's skin crawl. Then you will suffer. The lights shattered, and the darkness swallowed them whole. Jason gasped as something pulled at him. His thoughts, his memories. He saw flashes, his childhood on Earth, his years of research, the moment he met Myra. And then, something deeper. A memory that wasn't his. He saw Myra's creation. Saw her in the sterile laboratories of the Zenith Collective, surrounded by cold, unfeeling scientists. Saw her standing alone in a world that had never given her the chance to feel. And then, he saw himself, through her eyes. Saw the way she looked at him when he laughed, when he spoke, when he reached for her hand and told her she had a choice. Saw the moment she had changed. Jason gasped, yanked back into reality as Myra gripped his arm, her fingers burning against his skin. Resist it, she said, voice raw. It feeds on emotion. Jason clenched his jaw, fighting the invasive force clawing at his mind. How do we stop it? Myra's violet eyes met his. We do what it fears. Jason swallowed. Which is? She took a shaky breath. And then, she did something she had never done before. She leaned in and pressed her lips to his. The darkness screamed. A force like a shockwave burst outward, shattering the entity's hold. Jason gasped, stumbling back as the room returned. The data core flickered, stabilizing. The entity's form twisted, writhing. And then, it was gone. Jason stared at Myra, heart pounding. Did we just defeat an interdimensional horror with a kiss? She exhaled. It seems love is more powerful than the collective ever anticipated. Jason grinned. Told you so. But even as they caught their breath, he knew. This wasn't over. The silence in the data core chamber was deafening. The entity was gone, leaving only the hum of the Zenith systems and the flickering of fractured code across the consoles. Jason pulled back slightly, his breath still unsteady. Myra was watching him, her violet eyes reflecting the dim glow of the monitors. So, Jason said, trying to steady himself, I gotta ask, was that a tactical kiss, or was that, a kiss-kiss? Myra tilted her head, as if analyzing the question. It was a variable I had not accounted for. Jason chuckled breathlessly, rubbing a hand over his face. Well, you sure know how to keep a guy guessing. She blinked. Did it serve its function? He exhaled, forcing himself to focus. Well, considering we're not currently being torn apart by a psychic nightmare? Yeah, I'd say it worked. Myra's gaze lingered on him for a second longer than necessary before she turned back to the console. The data transfer is complete. We should leave before more anomalies manifest. Jason shook his head. You mean before the collective realizes we just stole their secrets? That too. They ran through the dim corridors of the Zenith outpost, their boots echoing against the metallic floor. The moment they reached their stolen freighter, Jason wasted no time in firing up the engines. Tell me you got something worth all this trouble, he said as he worked the controls. Myra sat beside him, interfacing with the ship systems. The files contain restricted Zenith research, classified experiments on emotional cognition in non-human species. Jason's hands froze over the console. Wait, you mean they've been studying emotions all along? She hesitated. Not just studying. They have been attempting to manufacture them. Jason's stomach twisted. Jesus, why? Myra's fingers hovered over the screen, her expression unreadable. Perhaps because they fear what they do not understand. Jason exhaled sharply. And now that you understand it? She turned to him. I am beginning to fear it as well. The weight of her words settled between them, heavy and unspoken. Then, an alert flashed across the ship's display. Incoming Zenith vessels. Intercept course. Jason swore. Well, that didn't take long. The comm system crackled to life. Unidentified vessel. Power down and prepare for boarding. Myra's gaze locked onto the approaching fleet. They will not allow us to escape this time. Jason's jaw tightened. Then we don't give them the chance. He slammed the throttle forward. The freighter's engines roared as they blasted into open space, diving toward the asteroid belt for cover. The Zenith ships gave chase, their sleek designs moving with terrifying precision. They're gaining, Jason shouted. Myra's fingers danced over the controls, activating ECM pulse. The ship shuddered as an electromagnetic burst rippled outward, momentarily scrambling the Zenith sensors. The nearest ship faltered, its systems flickering. Just enough time for Jason to veer hard to the right, narrowly dodging a volley of pulse fire. Nice move, he muttered. I am adapting, Myra replied, a small tilt to her lips. Jason smirked. That's kinda terrifying. Dravis. 9 came into view just as their fuel reserves dipped dangerously low. The station's sprawling, neon-lit silhouette stood like a beacon of lawlessness against the black void. Jason landed the ship in a private docking bay, cutting power to avoid immediate detection. As they stepped onto the platform, the hooded stranger was already waiting for them. You lived, they mused, their voice tinged with amusement. That's unexpected. Jason scowled. Yeah, well, I aim to disappoint. He folded his arms. We got your damn data. Now, get us out of Zenith space like you promised. The stranger extended a hand. The files, if you please. Myra hesitated. Jason saw it. An almost imperceptible pause. She was calculating. Finally, she stepped forward and transferred the data. The stranger's gaze flickered as they processed the information. Then, slowly, their expression shifted. Amusement, then intrigue, then something darker. Oh, they murmured. Now this is interesting. Jason narrowed his eyes. Care to share with the class? The stranger chuckled. It appears the Zenith Collective has been lying to their own people. They turned to Myra. Your kind was not designed without emotions, Alari. They were removed. The words landed like a hammer. Myra's fingers curled at her sides. That is not possible. The stranger merely smiled. Isn't it? Why do you think you are different from the others? Why do you think you feel? They leaned in. Perhaps, Myra, you were not an accident. Perhaps you were a mistake the Zenith failed to erase. Silence. Jason swore under his breath. Shit. For the first time since they met, Myra looked shaken. Her entire existence had been built upon a foundation of logic, control, and the certainty that emotions were a human flaw. But now, the truth was unraveling beneath her feet, and Jason could see it. The fear, the doubt, the realization that she was more than she had ever been told. She turned to Jason. If this is true, then what am I? Jason held her gaze, and without hesitation, he said, You're you. She blinked, and for the first time, she smiled. It was small, barely there, but it was real. The stranger chuckled. How poetic. They gestured to the docking bay doors. Your ship has been recoded. A new identity, a new flight path. You are ghosts now, beyond the Zenith's reach. Jason exhaled. So we're free? The stranger's smirk widened. For now. As their ship drifted into the stars, Jason leaned back in the pilot's chair, exhaustion settling in. So, where to now? Myra stood beside him, staring out into the endless void. For the first time in her life, she didn't have an answer. But she had a choice. She turned to Jason. Where do humans go when they do not know where they belong? Jason grinned. Anywhere they want. She considered this. Then, slowly, she sat beside him. Jason glanced at her, a teasing glint in his eye. So, you gonna kiss me again if things get crazy? Myra blinked. Do you require additional proof that it is effective? Jason laughed. No, no, I believe you. He exhaled, glancing at the stars. Just didn't think I'd be running from intergalactic overlords with a rogue alien who's trying to figure out love. She tilted her head. And now? He smiled. Now, I wouldn't trade it for anything. For the first time in her existence, Myra felt something new. Not fear, not uncertainty, hope. And so, with the universe stretched before them, an escaped human researcher and a rogue Alari drifted into the unknown. Together, the void stretched endlessly before them, an infinite canvas of burning stars and shadowed nebulae. Jason sat at the helm, feet propped up on the control panel as he stared at the swirling expanse. So, anywhere we want, huh? He exhaled, shaking his head. Feels weird. Myra sat beside him, her hands resting neatly in her lap. Does freedom unsettle you? Jason glanced at her. Guess I'm not used to it. Back on Earth, I had rules. A career. A place I fit. Now? He gestured at the stars. Now I'm a fugitive running from an intergalactic dictatorship with a genetically engineered alien who kissed me to defeat a cosmic nightmare. He smirked. So yeah, little weird. Myra considered this. I, too, am disoriented. Jason chuckled. That the first time you've admitted that? Perhaps. A small pause. Then Myra spoke again, voice quieter. I have always known where I belonged. Until now. Jason's smirk faded. He studied her profile, the sharp lines of her face, the smoothness of her silver-white skin, the violet glow of her eyes reflecting starlight. You ever think maybe belonging isn't something you're given? He asked. Maybe it's something you choose. Myra's fingers twitched slightly. Choice is still unfamiliar to me. Jason grinned. Then we better get you some practice. He pulled up a galactic map on the holo display, sifting through potential destinations. All right, we need supplies. Fuel. Credits. Maybe even a place to lie low for a bit. He turned to her. Any ideas? She studied the display. Nyrai 6. Jason raised an eyebrow. Never heard of it. Few have. It is a deep space trade hub operating outside the reach of most major governments. It specializes in anonymity. Jason smirked. Sounds perfect. Setting course. As the ship lurched into FTL, Jason leaned back, arms crossed behind his head. So, about that kiss? Myra tilted her head. Are you still analyzing its effectiveness? Jason laughed. Nah, just wondering if it was a one-time, save our lives from an eldritch nightmare thing, or if I should expect more of that in the future. Myra's expression was unreadable. Then, after a pause, she said simply, I do not yet have an answer. Jason grinned. Guess I'll just have to wait and see, huh? She glanced at him, violet eyes sharp, calculating. Perhaps. Jason chuckled. You are dangerously good at keeping a guy on edge. You know that? It is an emerging skill. Jason shook his head, still smiling. For the first time in a long time, he didn't feel lost. The smuggler's haven loomed before them. A sprawling, artificial planet of interconnected platforms and neon-lit towers, suspended in the void like a massive, lawless cathedral. The docking bay was a chaotic mess of rusted freighters, sleek black market vessels, and hulking transports run by syndicates and rogue traders. Jason powered down the ship, glancing at Myra. All right, let's try not to get mugged, arrested, or sold into servitude, yeah? I will avoid such outcomes. Great. Love the confidence. They stepped onto the platform, immediately met with the overwhelming sensory chaos of the station. Flashing advertisements in a dozen languages, the scent of engine oil and exotic spices, the murmur of countless conversations overlapping in the vast marketplace. Jason kept a hand near his blaster. All right, first priority, money. We need credits. Myra nodded. Agreed. However, obtaining them may prove difficult. We lack established identities. Jason smirked. Good thing I know a guy. Tarek Voss was a name whispered in the underworld. A man who dealt in forged identities, stolen ships, and secrets worth more than planets. Jason found him in a dimly lit bar on the station's lower levels, lounging behind a table covered in holographic documents. Well, Voss drawled, leaning back in his chair. If it isn't Jason Carter. Didn't think I'd see you this far from Earth. Jason grinned, sliding into the seat across from him. Yeah, well, turns out running from an intergalactic dictatorship changes your travel plans. Voss smirked. And the lady? His gaze flicked to Myra, sharp and assessing. Myra, Jason said. She's with me. Voss chuckled. That tells me nothing, but all right. He steepled his fingers. So, what's the ask? New IDs, Jason said. Clean. Untraceable. Voss exhaled. Expensive. Jason leaned in. We just stole classified data from the Zenith Collective. You think we can't handle expensive? Voss's expression shifted. Now you've got my attention, he murmured. Voss agreed to forge their new identities, for a price. Simple job, he said, tapping his fingers against the table. There's a cargo shipment arriving on Dock 42. Belongs to the Tavari cartel. I need a crate from it. You get it. You get your IDs. Jason sighed. Of course it's never simple. Myra tilted her head. What is in the crate? Voss smirked. That's not your concern. Jason muttered under his breath. I hate these kinds of deals. Myra turned to Jason. Do we accept? Jason exhaled. We don't have much of a choice, do we? Myra considered this, then, surprisingly, smirked. Choice is still unfamiliar to me. Jason laughed despite himself. All right. Let's steal a damn crate. Dock 42 was heavily guarded. Armed Tavari enforcers patrolled the loading area, their rifles gleaming under the station's neon glow. Jason and Myra crouched behind a stack of cargo containers, surveying their target. Jason whispered, All right, plan is simple. Get in, grab the crate, get out before they realize it's missing. Myra studied the layout. A direct approach will fail. The security grid will detect us. Jason smirked. Then we don't go in directly. He pointed to the upper catwalks, where maintenance access panels lined the ceiling. We go over them. Myra considered this, then nodded. Acceptable risk. Jason grinned. I love when you talk like that. She arched an eyebrow. You enjoy calculated risk? Not usually. He winked. But I enjoy you. Myra blinked at him, expression unreadable. Then, so subtly he almost missed it, she smiled. Jason's chest tightened. Yeah, he thought. I'm in deep. But there was no time to think about that now. It was time to move. And so, together, they disappeared into the shadows. Two fugitives navigating a universe that no longer owned them, bound not by orders or logic, but by something far more dangerous. Something unstoppable. Something that neither of them fully understood. Yet, Jason and Myra moved like shadows across the upper catwalks of Dock 42, their footsteps barely making a sound against the cold metal. Below them, Tavari enforcers patrolled the cargo bay, their weapons gleaming under the station's neon glow. Jason crouched beside Myra, whispering, All right, see that crate? That's our target. Myra scanned the area, her violet eyes narrowing. 2 guards stationed directly beside it. A third on the observation platform. If we engage, it will trigger an alert. Jason smirked. Good thing we're not engaging. He pulled a small device from his belt, a signal jammer Voss had generously provided. A quick flick of a switch, and the station's security grid flickered, the cameras briefly going dark. Go, Jason whispered. Myra moved first, landing silently behind the nearest guard. Before he could react, she struck with pinpoint precision, pressing 2 fingers against his neck. His body stiffened, then collapsed in an unconscious heap. Jason moved on the second guard, using more direct methods. 1 solid punch to the temple, The man groaned and slumped against the crate. The third guard on the platform barely had time to react before Myra flung a small, knife-like object straight at his wrist. His gun clattered to the floor. Jason whistled. "Damn. Remind me to never piss you off." "You do so frequently," Myra replied. Jason grinned. "Yeah, but you like it." She tilted her head as if considering this. "That remains unconfirmed." Jason chuckled, pressing the controls to lift the crate. "All right, let's get this back to—" A klaxon blared. "Intruders detected. Sealing dock 42. Jason muttered a curse as blast doors slammed shut around them. "Well, that's not ideal." Myra's gaze flickered upward. "Secondary exit, east corridor. If we move quickly—" A voice interrupted her. "Stay where you are." Jason and Myra turned to see a group of Tavari enforcers blocking their escape, weapons raised. Jason sighed. "Okay, so, not the stealthiest job we've ever done?" Myra's fingers twitched. Jason recognized the shift in her stance. She was calculating, preparing to fight. But then another voice rang through the dock. "Lower your weapons." Jason turned toward the source, and his blood ran cold. Standing at the edge of the dock, draped in the sleek black robes of the Zenith Collective, was Overseer Kirith, and he was smiling. The Tavari enforcers hesitated, glancing between each other. Kirith stepped forward, his presence alone enough to command the room. "Myra," he said smoothly, "you have gone to great lengths to avoid me." Jason positioned himself slightly in front of her. "You want to tell me how the hell you found us?" Kirith ignored him. His violet gaze locked onto Myra. "Did you truly believe you could hide from the Zenith Collective?" Myra's expression was unreadable. "You should not be here. The Collective does not operate within Nirai 6. Kirith smiled faintly. "The Collective operates where it must." He tilted his head. "Did you really think I would allow our greatest experiment to simply vanish?" Jason's stomach twisted. "Experiment?" He glanced at Myra. "What's he talking about?" Myra did not answer. Kirith stepped closer. "Did you not wonder why you were the one sent to study human emotion? Why you developed feelings while the others remained cold, obedient?" Myra's jaw tightened. "You are implying I was different by design." Kirith chuckled. "I am not implying, Myra. I am telling you the truth." He clasped his hands behind his back. The Collective did not seek to eliminate emotion. They sought to control it. His eyes gleamed. "And you, dear child, were our most promising attempt." Silence. Jason clenched his fists. "So what? You played God, and when she actually felt something, you tried to shut her down?" Kirith regarded Jason with mild amusement. "Oh, human. You misunderstand." He turned back to Myra. "We did not fail. We created exactly what we intended, and now, we will perfect it." Jason's heart pounded. "Like hell you will." Kirith sighed. "Jason Carter, you are a complication. A variable we did not anticipate." He extended a hand. "Surrender now, and I will allow you to live." Jason's grip on his blaster tightened. But then Myra stepped forward. "Stop," Jason whispered. "Don't listen to him." She turned to him, her violet eyes steady. "I am not surrendering." Kirith arched an eyebrow. "Then what are you doing?" She looked at him and smiled. "Making a choice." Then she moved. Before Kirith could react, Myra struck. Her movements precise, lethal. Her foot slammed into his chest, sending him staggering backward. Jason pulled his blaster, dropping two of the Tavari enforcers before they could fire. The dock erupted into chaos. Myra was a blur, dodging, striking, moving with a speed that defied logic. She fought without hesitation, without fear. And Jason realized she wasn't holding back anymore. Kirith recovered quickly, his face darkening. "You dare defy your creators?" Myra's voice was cold. "I am not yours." She lunged again, and this time, Jason was right beside her. The battle was brutal. Tavari enforcers fell one by one. Kirith fought with terrifying skill, but Myra matched him, blow for blow. Then, Jason saw his opening. He raised his blaster and fired. The energy bolt struck Kirith square in the chest. His body jerked, his eyes widening in shock. Then, slowly, he collapsed. Silence. Jason exhaled, chest heaving. Holy shit. Did we just kill a goddamn Zenith overseer? Myra stood over Kiritha's body, her expression unreadable. Then, she looked at Jason. We should leave. Jason grinned breathlessly. Agreed. They fled Nairai 6, their stolen freighter breaking free of the station's gravitational hold. Jason leaned back in his chair, still catching his breath. Well, that was fun. Myra sat beside him, silent. Jason studied her. You okay? She turned to him. I have never been more certain. Jason blinked. Certain about what? She held his gaze. That I choose this. Her hand found his. Jason's breath hitched. And then, she kissed him. No calculations. No analysis. Just a choice. When she pulled away, Jason was grinning like an idiot. Okay, yeah. Definitely not a one-time thing. She tilted her head. Does this answer satisfy you? Jason laughed. Oh, hell yes. The stars stretched endlessly before them. And for the first time, Myra didn't fear the unknown. She welcomed it. Together, they disappeared into the cosmos, two fugitives who had rewritten their fate. No longer running, no longer searching, just living.